On a chilly morning, February 27th, 2024, at the Target store on Elm Street in Hollywood, Florida, the usual bustling shopping atmosphere was suddenly disrupted by the start of a dramatic pursuit. The police received an emergency call from the store's security staff, reporting a suspicious woman blatantly stuffing her handbag with unpaid items. When Officer Smith arrived at the scene, he quickly spotted a woman with an unusually bulging handbag attempting to leave the store. Acting with responsibility, Officer Smith approached her and requested to check her identification. And that was the beginning of a bizarre and humorous series of events that no one could have predicted. She stood at the exit, waving a large Target shopping bag and grinning widely as though she had just won the lottery. From a distance, she looked poised and confident, but her face revealed a clear tension. Officer Smith approached, trying to maintain a friendly tone. "Hello, ma'am. Could I please see your ID?" Officer Smith asked politely, her voice tinged with fatigue but still professional. Immediately, the woman shot back with an outraged tone. "ID? Who do you think you are asking for my ID? This is my bag, my stuff. I didn't steal anything." Her eyes glimmered with defiance, and she clutched her phone tightly as if preparing to call her lawyer. The woman, who identified herself as Karen Martinez, seemed to have a ready speech to defend her rights. Not only did she refuse to show her ID, but Karen also insisted she was a model citizen and accused Officer Smith of harassing an innocent person. To add more drama, Karen switched her phone to speaker mode and called her mother. "Mom, I'm being harassed by the police at Target. I didn't do anything wrong." All eyes in the store were on the conversation. Shoppers stopped, employees whispered to each other, and children stared wide-eyed, as if watching a scene from a movie. Officer Smith, although accustomed to awkward situations, tried her best to remain calm. "Ms. Martinez, I just need to see your ID to verify some information. If you haven't done anything wrong, this will be over quickly," Smith said, keeping her tone composed. But Karen exploded like a bomb. "I know my rights. I don't have to show you my ID. This is harassment." The confrontation between Officer Smith and Karen Martinez quickly drew the attention of those nearby, turning the area near the Target checkout into a small stage full of emotion. Karen's unfounded accusations, defiant attitude, and sharp reactions made Officer Smith realize that this would not be the peaceful morning she had hoped for. Officer Smith was no stranger to tense situations, but this encounter quickly turned into a dramatic scene. The woman identifying herself as Karen Martinez shifted from a calm mode to a dramatic one within seconds. As soon as Officer Smith mentioned the word ID, Karen swiftly pulled out her phone, worked the device with lightning speed, and called her mother. "Mom, can you hear me? I'm being harassed by the police. They're arresting me just because I'm shopping." Her voice echoed throughout the store, drawing the attention of everyone around. Her tone sounded like that of an actor in a funny but dramatic play, as if participating in some reality TV show. All eyes in the store were now focused on the two of them. Some customers stopped to watch, and a few even discreetly recorded videos on their phones. Some children began whispering to their parents, wondering if this was a scene from a Hollywood film. "Ma'am, I just need you to cooperate a little and show me your ID," Officer Smith continued, maintaining a patient tone, trying to stay away from the chaos Karen was creating. But for Karen, this seemed like an opportunity to showcase her oratory skills. "I don't have an ID! I'm a law-abiding citizen, living a normal life. This is an outright violation of my human rights," Karen screamed, holding her phone up like she was live streaming on social media. "Mom, tell them! They have no right to do this." On the other end of the phone, an older woman's voice faintly came through. "Karen, calm down, honey. Don't make a scene." But Karen ignored her mother's advice, continuing her dramatic performance. Officer Smith, although she had been through countless difficult situations, felt slightly awkward. She made one last reminder before things went too far. "Ms. Martinez, if you don't present your ID, I'll have to take you to the station to verify your identity." But Karen stubbornly persisted, continuing to make excuses and arguments like a defense attorney in court. "You don't have the right to do that. I'm talking to my mother, a law-abiding American citizen, and you're invading my privacy. This is harassment." It was clear that Karen had a plan for this situation, to drag out the conversation and cause as much disruption as possible. She hoped that by raising her voice and drawing attention to herself, she could make Officer Smith back down. However, with years of experience in the field, Officer Smith decided to end the performance. "Ms. Martinez, this is your final warning. If you don't cooperate, I will have to handcuff you." Despite the warning, Karen ignored her and began shouting louder, repeating that she was being harassed and her privacy was being violated. Officer Smith, realizing the situation was spiraling out of control, signaled to a nearby colleague. Feeling that things were getting out of hand, Karen suddenly changed tactics. She stepped back, sat down on the ground, and yelled, "You can't arrest me! I have the right to talk to my lawyer! This is America, where people have freedom!" Karen's dramatic defenses not only made Officer Smith sigh, but also caused chaos in the entire Target store. Clearly, Karen Martinez was not just an ordinary shopper, but a self-proclaimed star of this street theater, unafraid to use every trick in the book to escape the situation. Eventually, Officer Smith had no choice but to take action, handcuffing Karen Martinez and starting the process of taking her to the station, while the surrounding customers couldn't stop gossiping about the humorous performance they had just witnessed. As Officer Smith moved forward to handcuff her, the woman, now identifying as Karen Martinez, suddenly sprang up as if someone had hit the panic mode button. With an athletic twist, no less impressive than a sprinter, Karen yelled, "Don't touch me! I just had surgery! Are you trying to cripple me?" Though prepared for any situation, Officer Smith didn't expect Karen to be this fast. In a split second, Karen Martinez, who had earlier claimed she had just undergone surgery and couldn't move quickly, was now sprinting like a Ferrari on the highway. Officer Smith's warnings rang out behind her. "Stop right now! Stop or you'll be in even bigger trouble!" But those words seemed to fall on deaf ears as Karen barreled forward, her slippers sliding across the shiny tile floor of Target, making loud clacking noises that echoed throughout the store. Customers around her gawked in disbelief, some even applauding as if watching an impromptu marathon race. "I'm being forced! I didn't do anything wrong! The police are abusing me!" Karen shouted as she ran, her voice growing hoarse with exhaustion. It seemed that with every step, she was delivering another tragic chapter of her supposed story to everyone who could hear. When Karen burst out of the store, Officer Smith quickly radioed in, "Need backup at Target. Suspect is running toward the police station. Repeat, suspect is running toward the police station." Officer Smith herself was momentarily stunned and laughed when she realized that Karen was running directly toward the nearby police station. It seemed that in her panic, Karen had completely lost her sense of direction, or perhaps she thought the police station was the safest place, a decision both ironic and absurd. Undeterred, Karen kept running frantically through busy streets, weaving between parked cars, and even running through red lights. Despite screaming that she had just had surgery and was in pain, Karen showed no sign of weakness. Passers-by, witnessing the scene, either laughed out loud or whispered, "She must think she's Usain Bolt." The chase became even more dramatic when a patrol car, parked nearby, received a signal from the radio. 2 officers jumped out of the car and joined the pursuit. Just then, Karen slipped and almost fell, but quickly regained her footing as if nothing had happened, continuing to run without looking back. "I'm being chased! They're trying to kill me!" Karen shouted as she saw 2 more officers joining the chase. However, instead of running into alleys or trying to hide, she kept heading straight for the police station, as if it were the only place where she could find the justice she believed she deserved. The chase finally ended humorously when Karen barreled through the gates of the police station, only to be immediately stopped by a group of officers. They were surprised to see a fleeing suspect voluntarily walk right into the station. A young officer looked at Officer Smith and asked, "Did she just run straight in here?" "Yes," Officer Smith replied, unable to hold back a laugh. "I think this is the easiest arrest of my career." Karen Martinez, now exhausted, was panting and sitting on the floor. She began complaining about her innocence and demanded to call her lawyer. But it seemed that her escape attempts had only made things worse. What had started as a humorous escape ended with her practically handing herself over to the police, turning a minor offense into a long list of new charges. Perhaps in Karen's mind, this was her way of asserting her innocence. But to all the witnesses, it was simply a clumsy, absurd performance that was oddly entertaining. After being arrested and brought to the police station, Karen Martinez sat across from Officer Smith in the interrogation room. She tried to calm down, still panting from the dramatic chase. Officer Smith, with a stern yet patient expression, began the questioning. "Were you at Target?" Officer Smith asked, her tone firm yet warning. Yes," Karen nodded rapidly, trying to appear cooperative. "But I was just there to meet a friend. I wasn't planning on buying anything." "Your friend gave you a bag, right?" Officer Smith continued, her sharp eyes observing Karen's every move. "Yes, that's right," she nodded again. "She gave me a bag, but I really didn't know what was inside. I was just holding it for her." Officer Smith raised an eyebrow, clearly not fully convinced by the story. "Who is your friend? What's her name?" Karen hesitated for a few seconds before responding with an awkward tone. "Well, she's a Spanish friend. I don't remember her name. We just met by chance. She asked me to hold the bag while she went to get her car." "You seem to be very close to this friend, but you can't remember her name?" Officer Smith remarked sarcastically. Well, I only know her from social media. I'm not really sure," Karen stammered. "Actually, I just went to Target to use the bathroom and then she asked me to hold the bag. I really don't know what happened." The contradictions in Karen's testimony began to show as she kept offering increasingly illogical excuses. Initially, she claimed she only went to Target to meet a friend, but then she switched to saying she needed to use the bathroom. Officer Smith, who was used to these kinds of excuses, only smirked in disbelief. "Let me tell you something, Karen." Officer Smith leaned back in her chair, speaking slowly. "We've seen the surveillance footage. Not only were you holding a bag, but we also saw you stuffing things into it before leaving the store." Karen's face flickered with panic, but she quickly regained her composure, trying to maintain her innocent look. "The camera? There must be some mistake. I swear, I didn't steal anything. I was just holding the bag for my friend. You have to believe me." But Officer Smith knew better. The excuses were becoming more and more weak and unconvincing. She kept changing her story, from holding the bag for her friend to accidentally stopping by Target just to use the bathroom. Clearly, Karen Martinez was sinking deeper into the mess she had created for herself. "Do you think we'll believe those ridiculous excuses?" Officer Smith replied coldly. "If you were truly innocent, why did you run when we approached you?" Karen went silent for a moment, avoiding Officer Smith's gaze, clearly searching for a way to twist the situation. But it seemed that she had run out of options to escape. Once again, her performance had done little more than entertain everyone, rather than evoke sympathy. After a round of pointless back and forth, Karen Martinez finally sighed, her face clearly showing exhaustion and anxiety. She decided to switch tactics from denying everything to playing the victim, hoping to garner some sympathy from the officers. Okay. Karen raised both hands as if surrendering. "I admit, I ran because I was so stressed. The last time I was falsely arrested, you guys don't understand how that feels. I don't want history to repeat itself. I just got out of prison 2 months ago." Her voice suddenly grew louder, as if trying to drown out the truth she had just revealed. Officer Smith observed the woman in front of her, her sharp eyes not leaving Karen for a second. "You just said you got out of prison 2 months ago? For what reason?" Karen hesitated slightly but quickly responded, "Oh, it was just a misunderstanding with my ex-boyfriend. He accused me of stealing his stuff, but it was actually my things that I bought. But no one believed me, so they sent me to prison." She blinked rapidly, as if trying to evoke sympathy. Karen tries to evoke sympathy by expressing her struggles with PTSD, fear of arrest, and her responsibilities as a mother. But Officer Smith remains unaffected, emphasizing that her actions are only making things worse and urging her to cooperate. Karen pleads with Officer Smith, hoping cooperation will prevent her arrest, but Officer Smith explains that the evidence and her criminal history require further detention for investigation. Karen pleads with Officer Smith, hoping cooperation will prevent her arrest, but Officer Smith explains that the evidence and her criminal history require further detention for investigation. Karen, overwhelmed with despair, pleads for another chance, but Officer Smith coldly advises her to remain silent until she has a lawyer. Karen's attempts to find an escape failed as a Target employee confidently identified her, confirming her involvement in the theft and further complicating her situation. Karen's defense of being innocent and claiming she was doing charity fell apart as the evidence, including store footage and a witness, clearly showed her theft, making her situation worse. When the police searched Karen's bag, they found several stolen items from Target, including an expensive coat, further implicating her in the theft. Karen tried to explain the stolen items by claiming it was a mistake, but when the police found items hidden in the trash, her excuses became increasingly unconvincing. Karen, caught with the stolen items and no more excuses, faced the inevitable truth of her situation, as Officer Smith sarcastically noted her failed attempt at justifying her actions. The more Karen tried to justify her actions, the more she trapped herself in lies, and as the police reviewed her records, they discovered her long criminal history, including prior thefts and a court appearance she had missed. Officer Smith pointed out Karen's criminal history and failed court appearance, while Karen desperately justified her actions by claiming she was stealing for her children. Despite her emotional pleas, the evidence against her continued to mount. Despite Karen's emotional pleas, the police decided to detain her for the theft and added further charges for resisting arrest, as her actions only worsened her situation. Realizing it was too late to change the outcome, Karen helplessly pleaded for the sake of her children. Karen's refusal to cooperate only worsened her situation, turning a minor theft into a long list of charges. Despite Officer Smith's disappointment, Karen continued to deny the truth, stubbornly claiming it was all a misunderstanding. Officer Smith sighed, a sense of disappointment and exhaustion rising. "It's unbelievable. You could have avoided all this if you just stayed calm and cooperated. But now you're not just facing theft, you've also added resisting arrest, evading the law, and a pile of other problems." She stared at Karen, her gaze no longer forgiving. "You've done this to yourself." Karen looked down at the ground, her face hardening, and said nothing more. Officer Smith's words hit Karen like a heavy blow, making everything seem much clearer. The misunderstandings, the justifications, were no longer enough to protect her. Her initial refusal to cooperate not only made everything more complicated, but also led her into a situation she never expected. All Karen could do now was stand still, unable to deny or argue back. Finally, after a series of stubborn actions and relentless resistance, Karen was taken to the police station with a list of charges following close behind: theft, resisting police, and obstruction of justice. As she was pushed into the police car, her gaze was still filled with anger and frustration. Officer Smith slammed the car door shut and glanced through the window before speaking, her tone devoid of sympathy. "See you in court." Karen glared at Officer Smith through the car window, her voice still laced with bitterness. "Just another bad day. I have my rights. This is all a misunderstanding." Officer Smith stood there, a slight smile curling on her lips, unable to hide her sarcasm. "You have rights, but not the right to steal, ma'am." She shook her head, her gaze sharp as a knife. "Your rights are to be treated fairly under the law, not the right to take what doesn't belong to you." Karen had no more words to say. Her anger subsided, replaced by a sense of resignation. The police had done their job, and no matter how much she protested, she couldn't change the outcome. As the police car drove away, Karen gazed into the distance, chaotic thoughts swirling in her mind. But no matter what she thought, she couldn't deny one thing. It was her rash decisions and lack of cooperation that had brought her here. And perhaps next time, she would think twice before resisting. In the end, the story of this woman became a valuable lesson in patience, cooperation, and the consequences of hasty actions. Though she insisted on her innocence, the wrong decisions throughout the process only made things worse. If she had cooperated and calmly explained the situation from the beginning, perhaps things would have been different. Instead of facing severe charges, she might have only received a lighter penalty. The lesson here is that sometimes a little patience and cooperation can help us avoid unnecessary trouble, while also preserving our rights and dignity.